Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everyone. I will start here. I'm going to link in the description below a documentary I watched the other night. It is called Call Sign Courage, the Matt Lohmeyer story. It's very well done. And what it specifically details is his time in the military. He was in the Navy, and then he made his way over to Space Force at the end of the Trump administration, and then was in that particular position basically throughout the Biden administration. He became a whistleblower, and he started to, of course, recognize and report on the fact that all of their training was all surrounded with DEI nonsense. Just, again, the Marxist ideology of dividing the military from within, basically getting the best and the most morally sound individuals out of the military, and then keeping the most brainwashed and the most willing to accept all of that ideology and that demonic nonsense within the military. And he ended up, of course, losing his pension and 1,000 other things, but now he's back in the Trump administration. And you'll recognize his face because he was speaking at a particular event, I think, where Tulsi Gabbard was also there. And I think, if memory serves, it was during the 2024 run-up to the election. And he basically, again, said, hey, look, here's what I'd like to do in your administration. If you're okay with it, I'd like to make sure that these kinds of ideologies no longer exist in the military, and I'd like to be in charge of that, or at the very least help. And Trump basically hired him right on the spot. And that's essentially how it ends. But it's one nice deep dive into what was really going on in the military again, and the entire operation to upend it and destroy it from the inside. Now, they don't do a very good job of diving into communism the way that I would have liked. Of course, it was put together by the Heritage Foundation, so they're not going to bring up the Jewish question of any kind. They're not going to bring up the Israeli lobby. They, of course, didn't mention Zionism once throughout the whole thing, and they didn't mention, again, who started communism and who created it. And that's the answer. It's Jewish created, it's Zionist created. It wasn't created by Mao Zedong. They bring up Karl Marx a lot, but they don't dive into his real name, and they don't dive into, again, who he had connections with, and of course, who was influencing him and 1,000 other things. I mean, they don't waste a lot of time with that, it's not wasted time. They should have gone into that, but like I said, it's the Heritage Foundation. They're not going to dive into it. And once you sort of put that aside, you can still see, again, the infiltration of the military and what they were planning on doing. Now, as we know, the military isn't the only organization that's received that kind of infiltration and that kind of, again, degradation. It's certainly the American education system. They're a big part of it as well. It's happening from multiple ends. It was happening within multiple working environments, and it still exists. I mean, again, perhaps not as much in the military these days, at least I hope not. But it still exists and is alive and well within the American education system, and of course plenty of working environments and a number of other things. But either way, again, he was retaliated against, his life was threatened, and it's one hell of a story. And again, from one whistleblower to another, when it comes to whistleblowing stories, I certainly pay attention to those, and I listen closely to them because I can empathize with them. Again, he experienced, of course, a different level of it because he's dealing with the military, whereas I was just dealing with the American K12 system, but it's still government. And when you tell the truth to government, they don't like that. And when you expose illegality within government, they don't like that. And when you expose, again, policies and procedures that are being ignored and not followed, they don't like that either. And then they have their methods, and they have the ways in which they go about doing the things that they do, which are highly unethical. And they did it to him. So I will link it in the description below. Again, it is on my Rumble and BitChute channel also. Feel free and check that out. Again, it is called Call Sign Courage, the Matt Lohmeyer story. Okay. The Iran thing is getting funny and continuing to be highly entertaining. No doubt that the good guys are in control. I don't think that there's going to be some massive war. Even Donald Trump just the other day, and I even heard Fox News say it, and I just started laughing. The moment that they said it, and they said it, I mean, they say it so seriously, and their reporters in Israel, of course, say it so seriously when they read his tweets or, his truth posts, rather. And he says, if they don't, come to the table and make a deal and we don't get this settled, then I'm going to blow the whole country straight to hell. Or whatever the hell he said. I mean, it was something like that. It was laughable. He's not going to do that. That isn't going to happen. And the only way, again, that he can get away with saying such a thing, with having Fox News hosts not laugh at that comment or question the comment, or anybody question the comment, is because he's in complete control, because the military over there is in complete control. So all of this back and forth of the Strait of Hormuz is closed, it's open, it's closed, it's open, it's closed. All of that is just a game. It's all a game. Not to mention, where are all of the panicans and all of the black pillars when Donald Trump comes out and he basically says there's a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon? We're meeting with one another. We support the Lebanese. We don't want there to be any more bombing. We don't want there to be any more conflict or any more war. So Israel better not bomb anybody else. I mean, what happened to Donald Trump being owned by Netanyahu? What happened to all of that? Is all of that just gone now? Does everybody have amnesia when it comes to all of that? It's amazing. Let me play this quick piece of audio here, too. This is another example of why we are really in Iran. This is one of the many points, and there are many points, but one of them, of course, is not destroying the entire country. That's not the issue. It's about pulling off the control levers and getting all of the individuals' hands who used to be on those levers off permanently, and getting the good guys' hands on it again, and then, of course, giving it back to the people. That's the entire point, really. But when you go a layer deeper, of course, there's more specific reasons. One of them has to do with the 2020 election and the amount of election interference that took place over there. And by interference, I mean they receiving our votes, the deep state in Iran receiving our American votes, switching them, and then sending them back electronically. I don't have the exact date of this audio, but it's clearly an election panel. It's individual investigators, again, diving into a lot of the specifics about all of this, certainly from an IT standpoint. I wouldn't be surprised if this was after the 2020 stolen election. But either way, this is about 4 minutes long. Give this panel here a listen in 3, 2, 1.
This is real important here. This is an Iranian whistleblower. This just got dropped in my lap a couple days ago. I'm going to go through this very quickly. I apologize. We're going to rush through it. But this is actually real. This is the whistleblower actually connecting in through a special tool that can be downloaded for free on the internet, connecting to our voter registration database from where they are, pulling our records from the voter registration database. They're formatting them now into a nice format. They're copying and pasting. They're going to throw it right in here. So they have now extracted data from our voter registration database. This is in Alaska. Then they go to our government website to create a military ballot and watch them take the information from our voter registration database. This is a video from their system, and they did this apparently in the 2020 election. You're watching them, and this is automated too. This is just slowed down to show manually doing it. This whole process can be very easily automated.
Now, wait a minute. I was told that the 2020 election was the most secure election in our lifetime.
I think this guy might disagree with you, actually. So there he is. He's selecting. There it is. Voting right now on the ballot. And this is using our system. They're manipulating our system from the outside. Just created the PDF ballot. There it is. All ready to go right into our system. And the clerks and election officials, they don't know any different. They don't know that it came from this guy. And I don't know if you saw, well, I'll show you this folder. Let's see if I can pause that real quick here. This is kind of important here. And that was another one. There we go. Oh, I can get it here. Okay, look at that. Well, I've got very little bit of time, so I'm going to go through this really quickly. Here's a folder of PDF ballots right there. A big folder of them, okay? So I'm going to play the rest of it here. Okay, look at that. Colorado, Alaska. Look at all those states. There's 40 states of folders there. 134,728 PDF ballots sitting in the Alaska folder on this person's system. They didn't do just one.
Where did this video come from? And does the federal government know about it?
I think they should know about it, and they're probably going to know about it real soon. This is the tool, SQL Map. It's a SQL injection tool to get into the back end of the database. That's it. You can download this tool online. It's used by hackers for penetration testing. This is what they used to get into our registration databases. This is real. Get rid of every single computer system that manages our elections. The only way to have free elections is to have 100% transparency in our elections. And so there's no way we can use any computer system to give us free elections, because every single citizen has to be able to understand and see every part of our election. And since every single citizen is not a computer programmer, you can't use computers. This has to be done on paper with paper poll books at the precinct, voting in person, tabulating it by us in our precincts. And then at the precinct level, we sit and we share those results with the rest of our citizens at the precinct level. You add up all the precincts, you get your county. You add up all the counties, you get your state. You add up the states, and we get our federal. Very simple. The whole thing needs to be 100% transparent, or we cannot use it.
40 states, 40 folders with over 100,000 blank ballots in PDF format for each state. That's a ton of votes. That's enough to swing a presidential election. That's enough to swing any state election or any local election for that matter. But that's one of the ways in which it got done. The funny part, too, is that in countless Q posts, it says, "These people are stupid." And those messages would end with that line, "These people are stupid," referring to the people like that, the people trying to steal an election, the people trying to overthrow a government, the people, again, emailing each other back and forth, telling each other about what they want to do, how they're going to do it. I mean, again, they openly used email. The James Comeys of the world, the John Brennans of the world, all of these individuals, and they thought they'd get away with it. It's amazing. But more and more messages, again, are being put out by Donald Trump on Truth Social. It's clearly showing that he's pointing the finger directly at the Obamas, the Clintons, certainly Obama's entire administration, everybody, again, who was working underneath him and around him regarding not only Iran, but, again, the stolen election, treason and sedition, trying to falsify particular reports, get Donald Trump thrown off of the ballot initially in 2016. That, of course, didn't work. Trying to do it again in 2020. The fake impeachments, all of it. So, again, I think that this this is a pressure cooker. Something is going to happen here that's going to excite the American people, because it's going to have to be some kind of an arrest again that shakes people to the core. The evidence is out there. Endless people have already, again, reviewed all of this and reported on it. Tulsi Gabbard, John Solomon, endless people. So it's out there for the picking for anybody to even look at it. But something's going to happen here, I think, before the 250 anniversary. It's just playing out like that too much. So, yeah, it's a wait-and-see game, clearly, which is the part that most people don't like, and I don't like it either. However, there is an operation taking place, and that's beyond evident. I want to say this now, too. I decided to toss this into Grok just to summarize the video, because the video is 12 minutes long. It's the latest Promethean action update, which is titled "Economic Fury: Why Trump's Warning Went Only to Britain." And here's basically the summary of that video. It says, Trump disarming both Iran and Netanyahu. It says, Trump strikes on Iran achieve specific objectives, preventing nuclear capability without a prolonged war. Of course, it clearly says in the Q post, this is not about nuclear weapons. It's never been. This is about something else. The nuclear weapon thing is just a cover story. It goes on, it says, let's see. He also imposed a Lebanon ceasefire and explicitly prohibited Israel from further strikes on Lebanon Hezbollah, removing Netanyahu's leverage. And then according to Susan Kokinda, Netanyahu relied on a permanent Iranian threat to maintain power and avoid a two-state solution or secular Palestinian governance. Trump's moves are said to have taken that leverage away, contrary to claims that he was acting on Netanyahu's behalf. Again, the evidence is clear that he's not owned by Netanyahu. It's pretty crystal clear that that's the case. And then number 2, economic fury directed at London. On April 16th of 2016, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent met with the UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves and explicitly warned about the US commitment to economic fury, quote unquote, using all tools against those financing Iranian terrorism. Notably, this strong language was used only with the British, not with the Japanese or Italian counterparts met the same day. The US has been tracking financial flows to Iran, many of which allegedly lead through London. The video claims that this targets Britain's historic control over global pricing and insurance. Lloyd's of London war risk insurance specifically, especially for the Strait of Hormuz, and then London benchmarks for oil, the Brent crude, gold, metals, and shipping rates. Trump's response to insurance cancellations and threats to close the strait, the U.S. will insure ships itself and even blockade if needed, breaking London's monopoly. And then number 3, broader goal, ending the special relationship and empire. The real target is the City of London's financial architecture that has enabled global leverage for over a century. The speaker portrays this as Trump's ending a long-running extortion racket involving perpetual Middle East conflict for financial and geopolitical gain. Of course, that benefits Israel as well, and that's being shut down, if it hasn't already. Then it says panic in establishment circles. For example, the Hudson Institute is shown by hopes that King Charles's upcoming visit to the U.S. can salvage the Anglo-American special relationship, quote unquote. Again, when Charles comes over here, people are going to think, again, it's all about pomp and circumstance and, oh, it's the first time he's been over here since being the King of England and blah, blah, blah. No one really cares. And whatever's going to be said behind closed doors, he's completely neutered. He has no control now. In fact, not only are we over there, and not only do we have the goods on what they've been doing financially with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz as the UK goes, now we're in control. Which means, again, even the UK doesn't have leverage over us by any stretch. But again, according to Susan Kokinda from Promethean Action, King Charles is basically coming over here to beg. He's coming over here to basically say, hey, look, don't give up the goods on us. Don't tell the public about what we've done, and 1,000 other things. Again, their involvement over there with illegal trade has been going on for a very, very long time. God knows how long. But the amount of money that the United States now stands to make regarding all of this and the complete control of that general area is going to be astounding, I think. And this is a huge play, and it's a huge power play. And again, it's designed to destroy globalism, which is the point. And that's a good thing. Again, the panicans and the black pillars have got to get their heads on straight here, because there's something happening that people just cannot see for some reason, whether it's, again, their own cognitive dissonance or what, but it's obvious that this is not normal. This is not usual behavior, certainly from an administration, again, like this. This has never happened before. Again, the whole nuke thing is a complete lie. That's not the issue. Well, they're going to get nuclear weapons, and they're going to blow the shit out of everybody, and we're all going to be doomed, and all that. I mean, that's not the real play here. The one thing, again, that the Rothschild central bankers and even, again, the individuals behind the scenes that we never hear about, that we never see, the one thing that they always want is money and power and leverage. That's it. So when you take away the leverage and you take away the money, they have no power. They're just a name. And I think that's exactly what's happening here. Again, saving Israel for last is certainly a part of it. Don't believe for a minute that Donald Trump and the military don't know that Netanyahu, of course, and the Zionists are the real problem. They have to know this. It's beyond obvious. Anybody can see that that's the case. Breaking some kind of a ceasefire, killing somebody. Again, the amount of footage that is on the internet, specifically on X, and I should say this, and this is a point I've mentioned before, but the amount of footage that exists on X of Palestinians being executed is overwhelming. And Israelis and the IDF just executing people on a constant basis is overwhelming. There was a time when that would not have been allowed on X/Twitter, certainly back in the day. Less than 10 years ago, even. All of that footage would not have been allowed. The reason that it's being allowed now is because it's designed to wake people up to that question and to those individuals over there and to those groups of people. That's the point. And it's not being shut down. It is an exposure operation, which is good. And there's a lot of great information over there, again, on X and on Gab, more specifically on X these days, because there are more deep dives and more dialogue. But again, it is a massive exposure operation. And when you get into the comments section of anybody over there and you start reading the comments, it doesn't matter what they say, you're going to get bombarded with the truth. I'll give you just another quick example. It's off topic, but I'm changing topics here. Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, she mentioned the Holocaust last week, Holocaust Remembrance Week. I didn't even know there was such a week, but whatever. Anyway, she makes a post about this, and you have to know that she knows the truth about it because, again, she's in the military and she's on X and she's in government. Why wouldn't she know the real truth about the whole thing and how it's all a lie? But either way, she makes a post about it, and then every single comment, and there were a ton of them, thousands if I'm not mistaken, every single comment below her post was people just posting the truth about how the Holocaust wasn't real. There weren't gas chambers. In fact, Auschwitz wasn't even filled with Jews by and large. They were Poles. They were Christian Poles. Endless videos out there about that too. Individuals, again, who were actually there describing what actually went on. I think it was Birkenau was where most of the Jews ended up going. But either way, no gas chambers, didn't happen. It's just a giant financial grift, but you can't escape the comments section. It's amazing to me. I love it. And the only reason that it's allowed to remain is because, again, it's allowed to remain as an exposure op. Same thing with the Artemis lie and everything else that's coming out. I mean, it's just fantastic. I love it. So don't be afraid of the comments section. I think that's one of the lessons there, without a doubt. Okay, let me make mention of this too real quick. Turning Point USA. The walls are closing in on this, which is fascinating. And there's a lot of different angles, of course, and there's still a lot of different dialogue. But just to review very quickly, because I don't want to make the whole episode about this. This is a part of the internal civil war that is continuing to happen. And it is a civil war over the truth. Again, who's telling it, who's not, who's influential, who isn't. And Turning Point USA, as most of us know, is a cult. It's an Israeli operation. It's a deep state cult within our own government designed specifically to target college-aged individuals and high school-aged individuals. That's not an accident. In order to get them to believe whatever message is told by those who represent that organization on a stage. Again, the reasons for taking Charlie Kirk off of the playing field, so to speak, certainly in the public eye, because he was not executed and he wasn't assassinated, rather, and he's not dead. But the reasons for that vary, and I've been in certainly down rabbit holes as to what those are. What I find interesting now is there's more and more dialogue where people are actually suggesting that Erica Kirk herself is going to be running for president in the future. This is laughable. It's beyond laughable. And she deserves no position in any administration whatsoever going forward. Again, she's a cult leader, and she's a member of a cult. Again, there was that gathering last week with one of their representatives, the male representative, his name has slipped my mind, my apologies, and J.D. Vance. And the room was practically empty. Again, it was an indoor stadium, and the TPUSA rep was basically saying, hey, look, Erica Kirk's life was being threatened. That's the only reason she's not here, and blah, blah, blah. And then again, she ends up coming out later and speaking after the President of the United States at some TPUSA Action Committee thing. It's embarrassing. It's just laughable at this point why anybody is buying into it. But more specifically, the cultish aspect of it, which really slides right into Vivek Ramaswamy and the way that he's handled his rallies also, albeit very few rallies, certainly nowadays, because even Vivek is falling out of favor with a lot of people in Ohio, which is great because he's a piece of trash. But at that TPUSA thing where JD Vance was there, I played it in the last war video, and it's an audio of a guy, and he was there, and he was the last person to ask a question. And he was standing in line, and he was describing everything that was happening around the question asking in the Q&A. He said as soon as the Q&A started, there was already a line that had formed of at least 5 people. And all 5 of them were wearing TPUSA lanyards around their necks. He immediately was just like, this isn't organic. This doesn't look real. This is clearly staged. These questions are staged. The people are staged. They scripted all of this out in advance, which they do. And that's difficult for a lot of people to know and understand, is that it's the illusion of random people asking random questions to the Vice President of the United States. Again, that's not how it went down. So he describes again how he's standing in line, and then this woman comes up to him who's working for TPUSA, or certainly working the event, and she has an iPad or whatever, and she asks him what question he's going to ask, and he says, foreign affairs. I'm going to ask a foreign affairs question. And she wants him to get more specific, and he doesn't. He's just like, I'm just going to ask a foreign affairs question, and that's what I'm going to do. And so they basically ended up saying, well, the person in front of you is the last person to ask a question. But he's still standing in line, and then he dips over very quickly. He's not out of line, but he kind of is. And he's talking with somebody who's sitting down. And then he stands back up, and he looks at his position in line, and they've ushered a female into his position as being the last person to speak now. So apparently he was told that he was going to be the last person to speak, and then they basically allowed someone to cut in line. And it was another TPUSA goon with a lanyard around their neck, and that was it. And then JD Vance says, actually, we'll just take one more question. Go ahead and ask your question and whatever else. And it turned out that the last question was, in fact, this guy's question about foreign policy. And again, he wasn't a TPUSA employee. Doesn't seem to be anyway. Didn't give any indication that he was. The point is that it's not free speech. It's not freedom. It's not independence. They aren't that kind of an organization. It is a mouthpiece for the rhino establishment, Israel, and it is mind control. There's just no other way around it. They do not want certain questions being asked to TPUSA or the vice president or whomever. Again, look at all of the individuals out there who know the truth about what went on during the whole Charlie Kirk event. Why has not a single person, not one, been able to get in front of a microphone and say, okay, so we all know that Charlie Kirk's not dead, that shooting was entirely fake. I would like everybody to ask themselves the question, why was it staged? Was it staged to catch somebody? Was it staged to destroy TPUSA? Was it staged because they were financially reckless and hiding money and stealing money and lying to people? Was it also because, again, they're basically an Israeli lobby designed to, again, mind control and bend the knee to Israel and, only listen to us and have the conversations that we want you to have and so on and so on? Is that really the reason why you staged that entire event? No one's asked that question in a microphone because no one's allowed to. No one's had the opportunity because they're not presenting the opportunity to allow that to take place. I don't know how all of that is going to shake out regarding TPUSA, Erica Kirk, and the whole thing and the whole fake shooting. I have no idea. Not a clue. I know what I'd like to see. I'd like to see her crimes, if she's committed them, be brought to light and have her prosecuted along with, again, all of TPUSA. Why is, again, Charlie Kirk in witness protection or certainly in hiding from a government standpoint? I don't have a clue. But again, if he were to walk out on stage and be like, psych, I'm not dead, it was all staged and it was all fake and here's why, and then real bad people went to jail as a result, and the truth was actually told for the first time about all of it, that would be great. Again, as I've said before, It's the one thing that Candace Owens never brings up. She goes after Erica Kirk, and rightfully so. She goes after TPUSA, and rightfully so, but she never says that Charlie Kirk is not dead and the shooting was fake. Not to mention the entire show trial that's taking place right now regarding Tyler Robinson. The ATF doesn't have the bullet, and then all of a sudden some report says, psych, the bullet fragment that we have matches the gun. Well, which is it? Because you previously said that you don't have it, and now you say you have a piece of a bullet, which is impossible. Then, of course, they're playing Erica Kirk audio in the actual hearing itself, or the pretrial hearing itself, which basically, again, why would you be doing that when you're witness tampering or you're jury tampering or all of it? Is the entire case going to get thrown out? I don't know. It might. But it didn't happen. That's the whole point. So if something shady happens with the system, certainly again with this so-called show trial, which isn't a real trial, again, it would be thrown out on its face because you don't have any real evidence. There's no exit wound, there's no bullet, there's nothing. And there's three-letter agencies not wanting to give up information. Which means, again, if throwing it out for the purpose of not having enough evidence is the point, well, then mission accomplished. But there's going to be a lot of brainwashed people who are going to watch a Tyler Robinson walk free, and they're going to be real pissed. Which means he's going to have to receive witness protection also to some extent. I don't know. The whole thing is confusing, and it's exhausting. And frankly, I don't care. I just wish that more people would wake up to the brainwashing. And they would understand that the American K12 system and the university system is designed for just that. Because you don't see TPUSA walking into another business and being like, hey, can we teach you about politics? It never happens. It's only within school systems, which should prove, and of course the mainstream media, which should prove again that they are in on the brainwashing. They have a target, which is naive youth and unknowledgeable youth who want to associate with something and make it feel like they're a part of something. And then they suck them dry of all the money that they have, and then they say, well, here's what you need to be talking about, and here's where your focus needs to be. And the irony is that TPUSA's focus is freedom of speech. And yet they censor everybody all the time. And they criticize anybody who thinks about what really went on with that entire event and what role all of these people have within that event and certainly after the event. So the hypocrisy, again, is at face value. But I'm going to leave it there. I just find the whole thing remarkably exhausting. Just don't associate with groups like that. That's the easiest explanation. And, of course, make sure and tell American youth to not do the same. Don't associate with groups like that. Don't let other people do the thinking for you. If a massive group shows up and knocks on your door and goes, hey, would you like to come to one of our events? Your answer should be no. Almost doesn't matter what group it is. Again, TPUSA is like Jehovah's Witnesses. They just don't go away. They're always knocking on your door. And even if you tell them to go away, they'll still come back once or twice more. Are you sure? Are you sure? Yeah, we're sure. Bye now. It's amazing. I don't know. I'm glad that it's going stale. It appears to be going stale. It appears that people are realizing that they've been duped, which is good. Because apparently that was one of the real stories as to why Erica Kirk didn't show up, was because the crowd was so small. It wasn't because of some threat against her life. It was because no one was there to listen to her, and she prefers a big crowd. So that's why she had to speak at the TPUSA action thing when Donald Trump spoke before her. I don't know. He's got to know the whole thing is fake too. It's too obvious. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Okay, education stuff. Wanted to mention this. This was from last week, and it stretches right into the Matt Lohmeyer story also. Again, the whole transgender nonsense, and then what recourse do you actually have in cases like this? This is from the Gateway Pundit on April 16th, and it says, school agrees to pay up after counselor was fired for objecting to transgender policy. It says a school in Indiana has settled a lawsuit for nearly $200,000, again, They never learn, these people. The school systems never learn. You're going to get sued. You're going to lose. Here's another example of it. After a counselor was fired for her outspoken stance regarding the school's transgender policies, specifically the lack of parental notification. Quote, I am thrilled to see this case settled, but most of all, I'm grateful that Indiana law now requires that South Madison Community School Corporation to notify parents about the child's request to change his or her name or pronouns, Kathy McCord said in a statement to Fox News Digital. McCord, a 37-year-old education veteran, filed a lawsuit in 2023 after she was fired for speaking to the media about the Central Indiana District's transgender support plan. Because of that, South Madison can no longer force other educators to lie and keep secrets about children from their own parents, McCord declared. When I spoke out on my own time in my personal capacity, I did so because I understood how important it is for parents to be involved in all matters of their child's life, especially when their child is struggling. Yeah. Again, good for her. She's clearly one of the good ones. But these policies and these procedures, and we're going to change a kid's sex and we're going to allow them to pretend in school that it will only confuse them when they go home, thereby, of course, confusing their parents when they return home. That should prove that government and certainly school systems are interested in being the parent, and they, of course, are the most negligent parent of all, as I've brought up numerous times. Case in point, let me mention this too. This happened in Franklin County, the Columbus area of Ohio. They apparently had a let's get together and change your name legally and change your birth certificate legally assembly of some kind. Again, disgusting. Libs of TikTok also put this out. Picture of a flyer that says the following: Franklin County and surrounding counties birth certificate and name change clinic. It took place this past Saturday on April 18th between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. And here's what it says. It says what we'll have is trained volunteer attorneys, trained volunteer notaries, and community resources. The costs associated with filing are $128 for name change within Franklin County, $78 for birth certificate correction from Franklin County, and then fees vary for name changes in surrounding counties. It says who is eligible in the upper right-hand corner. For name change, it says residents of Franklin County or surrounding counties for at least 60 days. For correction of birth certificate sex marker, residents of Franklin County or accepting surrounding counties for at least 30 days, and born in Ohio. And then it says suggested what to bring, your questions, ! Government issued photo ID, copy of birth certificate. Financial assistance will be available for those who qualify. Applications will be taken on site. These people are disgusting. And the people showing up to do this also are disgusting. This is put on by transohio.org, another group called Equality Ohio, another group called BTM Ohio, Cooper Elliott, and some other stupid, I don't know, something queer, some queer group, who knows? It's just gross. Here's the thing, too. All of the executive orders and all of the state laws that exist across the nation, certainly when it comes to the whole alphabet soup nonsense, and the states, again, that have basically outlawed all of it in the diversity, equity, and inclusion language, the schools that exist that are still promoting this and promoting all of these activities in this language, I mean, they're still going. They're still operational. All they've done, again, like I've said in past episodes, is they change their words, they change the orders of the words, and then they pretend like they're not actually doing anything. The one thing that they're doing, though, now, from a policy standpoint, and it's not just within Ohio, it's of course in California and endless other places, regardless of the school district, is they're all playing the victim. Now they're all doubling down on their victim status, and they're saying, we're being harassed, we are being marginalized, and we need to support one another. So let's have more assemblies where we get together and let's change our policies so that we can continue to support all these marginalized groups and blah, blah, blah. It's just, again, virtue signaling to the nth degree. And they do not care because this is basically their last stance. This is the last thing they can do, is scream at the top of their lungs on their soapbox that people are making fun of them and that hurts their feelings. Well, too bad. Deal with it. Grow up. But again, they don't. They use paperwork and words, and they cry and they scream and they shout, and they do all of the things that they have to do, again, to basically wear the victim badge. Case in point, the United Teachers of Los Angeles. So you know this is going to be good. This is also from Libs of TikTok. It says, support for LGBTQIA+ students and staff. It says a new task force to support that alphabet soup nonsense. Students and staff include previewing policy on addressing anti-LGBTQIA+ harassment. So this is one of the things, again, if it's happening in Los Angeles, it can happen in a state like Ohio, which has already, again, put forth law that basically says, look, you can't do this kind of stuff anymore. But again, it doesn't matter. And then, of course, you may recall it was approximately a year ago when Linda McMahon was having everybody at the state level, certainly within Ohio, basically sign this pledge saying that they're not going to participate in any of these gay games anymore. But it just continues, which is the sad part because there's no accountability. What school have you heard of that's lost their federal funding as a result of this? I haven't heard of any, which basically, again, means the only option is to walk away. Leave these places for the brainwashed and the mentally disabled and the physically disabled and whatever. The healthy-minded human being should not be going to these environments. But it goes on. More bullet points with this. It says the Los Angeles School District has an obligation to combat bias and anti-LGBTQIA+ attacks against employees and students. In support of students, they say, students have access to facilities that correspond with their gender identity. Permit students to use name and gender with which they identify on school records, including pupil records, with parent-guardian educational right holder authorization. Can you imagine the secretaries within these school districts having to constantly change the pronouns and names of these whack jobs that consistently come into their office and say, today I'm feeling like I'm a cat, so my name is Professor Paws or Captain Whiskers, and that's what I want to be called now. I mean, good Lord. But anyway, it goes on. In support of employees, it says employees be recognized by affirmed name and gender regardless of legal documents. Well, that's an incomplete sentence, and I can take a guess as to who typed this out. Employees be recognized. That's good. All employees have the right to use the bathroom of their gender identity. That's right. So girls will be in the boys' bathroom, and boys, males, employees will be in the girls' bathroom. What could possibly go wrong? If the employee seeks to change name or gender marker, they may contact Office of Employee Relations to access resources in facilitating the change in accordance with district policy, unquote. I think it's pretty safe to say that no learning is going to be taking place in those environments. So, yeah, you want to send your kids to a nut job daycare? Go for it. Go for it. They'll get abused, their lifespan will be shortened, and drug addiction, sexual promiscuity, the whole thing. That's what will end up happening. I'll wrap up the education portion with this. This was kind of funny. This was sent to me by a friend of mine, and this has to do with our local sheriff criticizing another sheriff in another county in Ohio, just north of us, Preble County. And apparently their police chief decided to go down to Hamilton County. So geographically speaking, in southwest Ohio, you have Preble County north of Butler County. I live in Butler County. And then you have Hamilton County, which is where Cincinnati is below us on the Ohio River. And this particular Preble County police chief from the town of Gratis decided to go down to, again, the Cincinnati public schools and do some wellness checks. Basically snooping around to see if there's some illegal aliens down there. Now, as it turns out, of course, that's not their jurisdiction. So they can't be down there unless, of course, they're investigating something. And even if they are, they usually have to call the local police and the sheriff within that county and then correspond with them to, I don't know, get an illegal alien back who's being charged with something. But that's not what this was about. They were basically just going down there and snooping around. I find it funny, again, snoop around all you want, but again, they even use the term that I've said on the show where they don't step on each other's toes. Because unfortunately, Hamilton County is a sanctuary county and Cincinnati is a sanctuary city. But either way, here's a little 6-minute rundown of this particular story in 3, 2, 1.
We're learning more about the possible reason behind ICE's visit to Cincinnati Public Schools. Thanks for joining us at 6. I'm Trisha Mackey.
And I'm Rob Williams. The police chief for Gratis, who visited 3 school districts, say they were performing wellness checks.
We didn't even know what Gratis was, but you looked it up.
Yeah, it's a town in Ohio.
Annie Elming has more details about the district's response to that situation.
Yeah, Rob, Trisha, good evening. We're now learning today that the police agency claiming to be working with ICE was the Gratis Police Department, about an hour away from Cincinnati, up in the Dayton area. This is something that Superintendent for CPS Shauna Murphy says is alarming. Cincinnati Public School Superintendent Shauna Murphy describing what she knows about the incident.
They said they were there to do a wellness check. They did not get access, is what I can tell you. And I wasn't there for the actual conversation, but what I do know is they identified their need as being there for a wellness check.
Murphy says Gratis Police Chief Tanina Lamana, along with another officer, made an unauthorized visit to CPS, going to 3 different schools requesting, quote, wellness checks. CPS now identifies those schools as Western Hills High School, Reese E. Price Academy, and Roberts Academy. The officers were in uniform and arrived in a marked Gratis Police Department vehicle.
They did not have ice on their backs, but nonetheless, our staff felt very heightened sense of being alerted and uncomfortable with this.
Sergeant Anthony Mitchell with the Cincinnati Police Department tells me CPD was not notified by the officers that they were arriving and are aware the 2 Gratis officers had a list of students they were inquiring about. CPS discussed their systems in place to protect students, and students are only released to a parent or someone authorized by a parent.
I'm super proud of our staff who follow through as they are trained.
CPS General Counsel Daniel Hoying says he spoke directly with the Gratis Police Chief after the incident.
She confirmed that they were working with Customs Enforcement. We advised them. She confirmed that she was not going to any other CPS schools, and we asked her to direct all inquiries about CPS students to our office and not to go to individual schools.
I spoke with Christian Davis, a parent in the district. She tells me she still has questions as to why officers were directed to visit specific schools.
Where did they come up with, or who gave them access to that information?
Davis says she is glad the district acted so promptly, but hopes this prompts the district to further reinforce its security protocol.
Especially after this incident, to kind of reinitiate training, to have, some deeper training and deeper conversations with their staff.
We are hearing from a representative for Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. In a statement, we are told ICE doesn't target schools for enforcement action and says a law enforcement partner was attempting to verify school enrollment and conduct wellness checks on children who arrived unaccompanied across the border. They also say this was not ICE officers or an enforcement action. The statement goes on to say that ICE is investigating cases involving 450,000 kids who came across the border unaccompanied during the Biden administration. We are told more than 145,000 of those children have been located during the Trump administration. We are still waiting to hear back from Gratis Police.
The teachers union, of course, decided to come out and make statements, and in typical fashion, being a sanctuary county and a sanctuary city and a sanctuary district, they, of course, came out and said that they have to protect every child, and that's what they're interested in doing, and they have to educate every child. And it's just the same jargon over and over and over again. The aspect, too, that gets lost is that illegal aliens know what areas are sanctuary cities, sanctuary counties, and sanctuary schools. They look this up on their cell phones that they're given when they came over across the border illegally. I mean, they're given this information. And then, of course, they can look it up on their own if they choose to do so, and then they move. They'll move from one county to the next to make sure that the school system protects them. And they are, unfortunately, in Hamilton County. So again, was the Preble County sheriff really down there doing an honest wellness check on some, on a list of people that they knew maybe used to live in Preble County illegally and now have moved down to a sanctuary city? It's possible, but this is also the ongoing civil war. It's county to county. It's school district to school district. It's police force against police force. The other sick part is that these sanctuary cities, these sanctuary towns, counties, school districts, etc., all of them, they don't seem to understand that the minors who are involved in all of this, certainly the illegals, that they are the ones being trafficked, which means they're harboring trafficked minors. And they're not probably sitting them down and asking them, okay, so who brought you to this country? Because ultimately they would have to hand them over to ICE. But their laws and policies, so to speak, don't allow them to do that at all. Which means then they're just stuck babysitting an illegal alien, a minor, who may or may not have any parents around, who also may or may not be legal. But again, if they don't have any parents, then who takes care of them? It's an unwinnable business, and it's certainly more unwinnable and more ridiculous the more sanctuary, quote unquote, it becomes. Again, there's no learning taking place. It's political activism. That's it. Our staff are well trained to protect everybody all of the time. You're not teaching them anything, which means you're not a school anymore. You're a mining camp. You're something. You're a meat factory. I mean, God knows what you are, but you're not a school. So, yeah. Did they overstep their bounds in their jurisdiction? Of course they did. But either way, it just proved how ridiculous Cincinnati Public Schools is. I mean, you talk about a boomerang of a story, that was basically it. People thought in one direction it was just going to be about a Preble County sheriff overstepping her boundaries, and it turns out it just shows how ridiculous the Cincinnati public school system is and the entire county. So yeah, fine by me. Now everybody knows your nut jobs. Okay, now with that aside, let me move on to this. The Joe Rogan appearance in the Oval Office and the executive order on psychedelics. Let me read a brief little summary about this. And then I'll give you my 2 cents, and you might imagine what it might be, having been a former health educator myself with a degree in the field anyway. I would prefer that they spend a little more time on getting the COVID shots and all shots off the market and mRNA out of everything. That's what I would prefer. Because you have mRNA even in dog shots and cat shots and veterinary usage. A lot of people are unaware of this. So I would prefer that the focus was on that. But it's on this apparently right now anyway. Here's a little summary of this. It said again on April 18th of 2026, President Trump signed the executive order accelerating medical treatments for serious mental illness. This order does not fully deregulate or remove all oversight from psychedelic drug studies. They remain subject to FDA clinical trial requirements, safety standards, and Controlled Substance Act rules. Instead, it eases long-standing regulatory barriers, fast-tracks reviews and approvals, provides new funding, expands access pathways, and prioritizes research on psychedelics for serious mental illness, for example, treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, substance use disorders, in patients who don't respond to standard therapies. That was, again, directly from whitehouse.gov. I don't disagree with loosening the restrictions on studying its usage because, again, the pharmaceutical industry would not want these around and be used because they would push their own antidepressant drugs and their pharmaceutical poisons on the masses more so. So does this, again, basically spit in the eye of the pharmaceutical industry to some extent? It does, and that part of it I like. The dangerous part is that psychedelic drugs do serious damage to people. And if it helps 7 people out of 10 with limited usage that is monitored by a professional, again, in very specific cases, specifically targeting veterans, as they openly say, then, I guess that's okay. But where do you draw the line is basically always the question. And I think another question, like I said earlier, that a lot of people have with things like this is they openly say, well, wait a minute, why can't you put your time, effort, and money? I mean, we're talking about $50 million here. Why can't you put that into another alternative, or at the very least, just shut something down to begin with? I mean, in Donald Trump's speech, and he did mention it, he mentioned Ozempic, or one of the quote-unquote fat shots, and he brought up a story of a friend of his who started to use it, and he goes, yeah, I don't think it works. And people started to laugh. It was kind of funny, but even so, he's also making fun of Ozempic, and he's making fun of the quote-unquote fat shots also. Because again, I don't think Robert Kennedy Jr. enjoys those either, because they're harmful, and they hurt people, and they kill people. So some of these specific psychedelics that are targeted here are ibogaine, which is from an African shrub, apparently. It's used abroad for PTSD, addiction, and traumatic brain injury. Other psychedelics with existing FDA breakthrough therapy designation, for example, those involving psilocybin, magic mushrooms, quote-unquote, LSD, MDMA, or ecstasy, and similar compounds already in advanced clinical trial pipelines, and these remain federally Schedule I substances, high abuse potential. No accepted medical use under current law, but the order creates expedited pathways. Again, you want to study it, fine. You're, of course, studying it on human beings who have nothing else to lose. If they want to use themselves as a guinea pig, I suppose they can. That's typically how it goes. And yeah, I mean, again, if it has some benefits, that's fine. My whole thing has to do with where's the focus really need to be right now. And I think that the mRNA stuff, that entire bioweapon, is the larger problem. I don't think that this is huge. I don't think that this requires $50 million in funding. But that's my 2 cents. Again, I understand that people are in pain, but I also understand, again, how influence works and a little bit of pressure from here and there. But again, if it's veteran focused, I understand that too. And yeah, I mean, these have been conversations that have existed on a lot of these podcasts, and certainly Joe Rogan's, for a very long time. So it's not unusual. It just always ends up being the same question that everybody has when it comes to this kind of drug use. Again, is that it's used for particular studies, and then years will pass, and then all of a sudden it's legalized, and you can get it over the counter. That's where, this slippery slope does exist. And that's, I think, one of the things that a lot of people see with this, and they say, well, this is just the beginning of that slope. It's possible. I hope not. But again, in a controlled setting, in a controlled area with a specified dosage for individuals who want to try it, because right to try does exist, then hey, if a person wants to try it and they're in severe pain and they've tried other methods that haven't worked and they want to try this, go for it. Again, just because Joe Rogan has some people on his show who have taken some of these psychedelic drugs and all of a sudden they don't drink alcohol anymore, or all of a sudden they don't smoke cigarettes anymore, or whatever, just because it worked for them doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. But that, again, is kind of Joe Rogan's mentality, is it not? He thinks that if he does something, then it must work for everybody, and that's not necessarily true. So my bigger concern is the CDC director nominee. And let me get into a little background of this particular individual. This is Dr. Erica Schwartz, medical doctor, lawyer, Black woman, retired Rear Admiral in the U.S. Public Health Service's Commissioned Corps, and former U.S. Coast Guard Chief Medical Officer. Now, why would Trump pick this particular individual also when this individual is, she basically ran point on the COVID shots and pushed forth the COVID policies within the military when she was in those positions, certainly during the Biden administration. I mean, there's blood on this woman's hands, a lot of it, I would assume. But again, apparently Donald Trump referred to her as incredibly talented and a star. She previously served as the Deputy Surgeon General during his first term. And of course, she would have to be Senate approved, and then she would lead the CDC after a period of interim leadership and turnover. Degrees from Brown University in medicine and other institutions, plus board certification in preventative medicine, 2 decades in uniform, and roles as the Coast Guard Chief Medical Officer overseeing clinics, disease surveillance, and vaccination programs. That's not good. And earlier work developing policies on pandemic influenza, Ebola, anthrax, smallpox vaccination, and other outbreaks. So she's all in on the shots. I'm not quite sure why she's being picked unless it's an exposure op. It says Schwartz served as the Deputy Surgeon General during the early COVID-19 pandemic, which didn't exist, overlapping with the Trump administration's Operation Warp Speed vaccination development effort. Her documented involvement focused more on the broader public health response than direct leadership of vaccine development, distribution, or mandates. She helped coordinate national testing efforts early in the pandemic. Well, that was fraudulent, including standing up drive-through and public testing sites / tents, and served as a key liaison for communicating with state leaders on testing, surveillance, and emergency measures. Well, that's pretty much all I need to hear. She was involved in all of it. Every tent you saw, she ran point on the whole thing. Every stand on this sticker, 6 feet apart, she was a game player. It goes on, it says she contributed to federal preparedness and response coordination as part of HHS efforts. Again, she was involved. All the intimidation tactics, she knew about it. Critics from vaccine skeptical perspectives, it says here, have described her past work as involving promotion of vaccinations or being a cheerleader for the industry, while mainstream media public health voices praise her as qualified, evidence-based leader with experience in vaccination programs. Well, this is a problem. This next description is not good either. This is from the New York Times. It says, overall, she is viewed as a career public health and military medicine veteran. More of a quote-unquote traditional or establishment pick compared to some of the other CDC-related figures rather than someone deeply tied to vaccine development or aggressive mandate enforcement. Well, she's involved. I don't know how else to put it. It could be, and I'm hoping that this is the case, that this is one of the individuals, again, who is being promoted to be fired. Trump does use that method. He does use that strategy. He highlights them, he exposes them, he gives them a job or says, here, sit in front of this panel and do this. They either get accepted or they don't, and then once they take over the job, then they basically become defiant, and then Robert Kennedy can basically cut her loose. Or at the very least, he can tell President Trump she's being defiant, like the last gal who was in the position. She's not following what we're trying to do here and isn't a quote-unquote team player for the good guys, so she's got to go, and then she gets cut loose, and then she's unemployed. And probably then, at that point, out of the military. How would this individual, again, not be sort of a deep state player? I find that very difficult to believe that they wouldn't be. Again, if they were helping run point with Deborah Birx and the likes of Anthony Fauci and endless other people the first go-around, then this woman's going to be a problem. Again, anytime I hear the term that they are a career public health or military medicine veteran, specifically career long, that's usually not a good sign. That usually means, again, that they go along to get along, they follow orders no matter what, they'll jab as many people as they have to because they believe, again, germ theory and the vaccination lie and all of it. So we're going to see what happens here. I will watch her confirmation hearing because I want to see again if she even makes it to that point. But certainly what questions are asked and what are her takes on these particular things. Again, she's going to toe the line here. She's going to say things like, yes, I believe in vaccination. The COVID vaccines have helped, but maybe there needs to be more studies and blah, blah, blah. She'll give all of these military bureaucratic answers. If, again, she even testifies in a confirmation hearing, which hasn't been scheduled yet. I find that interesting because Jay Bhattacharya is still the acting CDC director. But yeah, if she sits in that seat and she takes questions, she'll basically agree with what everybody says, and she'll probably, again, because she's black, she'll probably receive endless support from Democrats just based on that alone. But again, you can't get up there and be anti-jab, or else you're not going to get accepted in the slightest. Again, same committee that approved RFK, and that's a slippery committee with some very jab-friendly doctors on that particular committee. So we'll see if this even happens, or again, if this is actually an exposure op. But right now, it feels like an exposure op because you'd think you'd want to pick somebody else. Okay, one last thing, and here's another reason why you'd want to pick somebody who knows about this and knows that this is a real thing. I stumbled across this old paper from the Bulletin of the World Health Organization, dated 1979 as well, and it was titled Immunological Approaches to Fertility Regulation. In summary, this has to do with inoculating Africans to destroy their reproductive organs. And they admit it. They say this is the point. Again, it's really not just Africans, though, is it? It's everybody, because that's what vaccination can do. Certainly these days, COVID shots. But here's what it says again in the first paragraph of the abstract. In view of strong evidence that there are specific components of the reproductive system that are not represented in other body systems, and that many of these are immunogenic, efforts are being made to develop an acceptable vaccine for fertility regulation. It is hoped that such a vaccine could be administered at infrequent intervals by specifically trained technicians in regions without clinics or medical facilities, i.e. Africa, the continent. For safety and practical reasons, an approach using active immunization procedures with a vaccine is preferred to passive immunization with antibodies. Translation, we'll just create a poison, not from some already existing virus for the purposes of preventing some viral infection. We'll just create an immunization that is a straight-up poison that destroys reproductive organs. Here's another little summary about this. Again, the paper was reviewed as early research on immunocontraception, using the immune system to prevent pregnancy. The core idea is to develop a vaccine that triggers the body to produce antibodies against specific molecules involved in reproduction. These molecules, or antigens, would be targeted because they are mostly unique to the reproductive system and not found or minimally present in other body tissues, reducing the risk of widespread side effects. Sperm antigens, ovum, egg antigens, and placental antigens specifically. So again, does it seek to limit reproduction? The answer is yes. And it's not just Africans. That's the whole point. And it's not just, again, two-legged animals either, like us. It's four-legged animals. It's anything that is alive, regardless of the location, because, again, this was put together by the World Health Organization. I found the AI summary of this to be funny and disturbing, specifically disturbing at the same time. It wraps up with this, and it says, this 1978 review reflects historic contraceptive vaccine research that continued for decades, with varying success and controversy over side effects, duration, and ethics. Modern immunocontraception work still exists, mostly for wildlife population control. Now, they, of course, say deer, horses, and elephants rather than routine human use. Sure, whatever you say, World Health Organization, it's just for animals. But we're animals too. So it's not a big leap. Ladies and gentlemen, I will leave it there. Thank you for listening as always, and I will catch you on Wednesday. And make sure and check out that documentary if you are interested. It will be linked in the description below. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.